and they like porn. He's like, go for it all day long, all day long. Oh, somebody's gay! Arrest the library! There's barely any Antifa. Meanwhile, there's like right-wing militias everywhere.
Well,
and there's like 2 Antifa dudes in Portland. But then if you just look at a right-winger the wrong way, they can blast you with their shotgun.
Welcome to the Culture War, everybody. This one's going to be fun. We're hanging out with Cenk Uyger.
Hey, Tim. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm kind of awesome.
Yeah. How's life? How's it going?
No big deal. Nothing interesting happening. Just running for president, running a company, hosting a show. Not busy at all. So I thought I'd just drop by.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Cenk Uyger, the ultimate left-wing grifter who preaches about progressive politics while simultaneously refusing to let his employees unionize. The man, the myth, the legend, who believes he can beat Joe Rogan up and change the Constitution with his presidential campaign. Obviously a man with big ambitions, decided to join Tim Pool on his popular show The Culture War, despite his very busy schedule running the worst campaign since the rent was too damn high guy. Never mind, that guy was pretty awesome. In this video, we're going to go over his appearance and display his cringe attempts at partisan hackery and his inability to keep the grift straight for longer than 5 minutes. Let's dive into this atrocious outing and show how Cenk is the ultimate cringe political pundit.
Okay, well, let's get into it because I get it, and but I've kind of changed my mind on something there, and that's partly why I say come bearing revolution.
All right.
Because, look, the thing that really set me off, and I thought that you were in that group, but I'm now beginning to change my mind a little bit on it, is that this is an old tried and true tactic of the right wing, is that they get people who used to be left wing, and then they turn them into turncoats. They pay them a lot of money, and then they trot them out there like in hostage videos. And then Tulsi Gabbard will come and go, "I am a left winger, but the right wing is right about everything. The right wing is right. The right wing is right." And then they love it, and they just all like this orgiastic reaction of like, "Oh, even the left wingers agree with us. We're so right." And it's like a trick that works every time with the right wing audience, and it's super frustrating.
They do it with former conservatives and Joe Biden.
Well, no.
Here's the first example of his trademark cringe voice. He loves to do this, where he will give the absolute best possible interpretation of his side's argument, and then when it comes to the opposing side, he'll give the absolute worst and most extreme position and pair it with this weird, exaggerated, guttural voice. Every time he uses it, you bet he is about to have a horrible take and throw good faith arguments to the wind. It's so obvious, because if he talks for long enough, he will eventually just contradict himself. Watch this clip where he basically just admits the left wing does the exact same thing.
And it really saddens me, sickens me that the Democratic Party has been taken over by neoliberals and neocons. And I mean, just look at MSNBC. It's wall-to-wall former Republicans.
And intelligence officials.
And generals and former Republican congressmen. I mean, Nicole Wallace is...
He really can't keep his story straight throughout the conversation. Another interesting clip is when Cenk and Tim discuss the appearance of inappropriate books parents have discovered have been in the libraries and being shown to their children while they're at school. This issue is what sparked the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. Let's see Cenk's take.
I just think the earlier years of someone's life are the most important. And if we can get one of the initiatives my buddies were talking about 10 years ago was converting libraries into hacker spaces, effectively workshops where the kids want to be there because they're making little higher balloons or they're...
But you know what would happen next, Tim? They would immediately look at and then the librarian nowadays, it'd be in Tennessee, and then the librarian would get arrested for 20 years because she let the kids accidentally see gay and they like porn. He'd be like, go for it all day long, all day long. Oh, somebody's gay! Arrest the librarian! That's what would happen.
Well, just don't let kids get access to stuff at all. And
yeah, I mean, first of all, that makes the whole book banning and all that stuff and all the stuff that DeSantis passed totally absurd. It's they're like, okay, we're going to keep these out of those kids' schools, and then that way they won't have it in the libraries, the classrooms, they won't have any access to it. Dude, it's called the internet, okay? They can get access to any kind of sex, any kind of materials, any kind of literature. They're going to find out that gay people exist online. I'm afraid of saying it because then Republican politicians are going to want to ban the internet.
But my actual position is, I don't understand how we got to the point where a child can't go into an adult bookstore, but a child is allowed to go on porn websites.
Yeah, so that ship has sailed.
Something's got to be done.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. What has to be done is parenting.
Yes.
And so the right wing weirdly lost track of parenting because they think that they're the parenting kings, but then they're always like, society has kidnapped my kids and they gave them this. No, look, I see things in society that I don't agree with. And you know what I do? I sit my kids down and I talk to them and I say, here's what's right and here's what's wrong and here's why, right?
But you know why?
Yes, Cenk. We all know those hardcore right-wingers love when their kids watch corn, as long as it's straight corn. Here he goes again with arguing in bad faith. Weird exaggerated voice? Check. Bad faith argument? Check. So the Cenk special. Keep in mind, he's defending graphic sexual material being shown to minors here, and then he's blaming the parents for getting upset. This next clip is pretty interesting. Tim explains a story about how a teacher was caught trying to teach young kids about Grindr. Cenk is unfamiliar with the story, but defaults into defending the teacher, despite not knowing how the parents reacted. And he says they reacted too harshly. He openly admits that this stuff is wrong, but he's also playing defense, trying to downplay it for some reason. Insists he would simply explain to the kids that Grindr isn't for them, and then have a conversation with the school. Well, the parents did go to the school and have a conversation with them. And guess what happened? And guess how Cenk reacts.
What we're having is, there's a teacher in Illinois who gave kids access to This Book is Gay, which teaches, it was to 10-year-olds how to use Grindr. And it's kind of like,
Okay, guys,
they called the cops on her.
But don't call the cops on her either, right? Like, don't overreact. So let's say that happened to my kids. My kids are 13 and 11, right? And so they were just around that age. And some weirdo teacher's teaching them about Grindr. Okay, the reaction I would have is, first I'd sit the kids down and go, hey, ignore that. That's for when you grow up and you make your own decisions. That's not the thing that you should be concerned about now. I'd have a good talk with them about the context. Then I would go to the school and say, guys, what are we doing? Right? You can't teach Grindr. What are you doing? Right?
Did you see what happened when parents did that?
Well, but the problem, Tim, is no, I didn't. But
the FBI called them terrorists.
No, but so you guys get so carried away with the FBI calling people terrorists because you think that they're doing it in such an expansive way, but they're not. It's like this hysteria. FBI.
What is he talking about here? He just admitted he did not see what happened when the parents confronted the school. And his response is, relax. I know they call you terrorists, but it's not in an expansive way. What do you mean it isn't expansive? Were they labeled as terrorists or not? This just makes no sense. It would be so easy here for him to be like, yeah, this is wild. They shouldn't be called terrorists. But he won't, because he must defend his progressive side at all costs. All right, let's move on here for when he's talking about the death threats. I think this is really an interesting topic because I find it crazy how people can't talk about issues without fear of this kind of stuff happening.
Right-wingers are in their bubble and never see the right wing attacking them. Why would they? Because they're right wingers. So you don't get to experience what we experience. And for a brief moment there, around January 6th, even the Republican congressman got to experience what the left wing experiences.
Well,
so what the left wing experiences is right wingers threatening to kill us 24/7. Now, that's not all right wingers. We're fair. We're reasonable. It's not the majority of right wingers. But is there a crazed percentage of right wingers in this country constantly threatening to murder the left wingers, Democrats, and now Republican congressmen? Yes.
Completely agree.
Fair point, Cenk. Finally, an issue we can come together on. Death threats to your opposing political ideology are horrible and should not be tolerated. I hear about this happening to non-political people online too, which just feels crazy to me. Maybe Cenk is finally about to gain favor with the audience so we can move forward in a productive manner.
To dress up and attack people. I know that if I go to if we have people on the show who rag on Trump, the responses we get are, you are wrong. If we go to places and we challenge the left, we get threats of violence and death.
No, not death.
Nope. The right wing just does not receive death threats. Cenk ain't buying it. Never mind the fact that we have probably all heard almost every political commentator talk about how this is happening. This is just something that's unique to the left and just unique to Cenk. Now watch the contrast here when Cenk gives his quick opinion on the Covington Catholic kids. You remember, 17-year-old kid who was put on blast by the entire country for smiling at some guy banging a drum. Keep in mind, he explicitly said he wanted to come onto the podcast to show Tim's right-leaning audience how much they may have in common with him. The grift slips quickly with this guy.
Do you remember the Covington Catholic kids?
To remind
the kid on the steps of the Lincoln?
Yeah. And they knew when he caught the feelings and sued everybody and cried like a baby.
And how many people?
You gotta love this guy. He sticks to the script. This kid's life was flipped upside down because of a minute video where he stood there smiling. He was demonized by the entire country, all for a video that was taken out of context. I don't know about you, but if I was in that situation, I would be freaking out. It was a 17-year-old kid. When I first saw that video, I was like, wow, that kid sucks. But then once the truth came out, I was like, you can't blame the kid for suing people who jumped to conclusions and permanently changed his life forever. But whatever. We are coming up on my absolute favorite part of the show. This is where Cenk and Tim discuss Antifa and domestic terrorism in the United States.
There's a strand of that on the extreme left, and it's always been around in the extreme left, but it got so muted. It's now back to rising up. It's bubbling up, and I'm worried about it. Whether it's tankies or whoever they are. I don't really like the Antifa thing. You guys hyped up so much, and then they never arrived.
What do you mean? They did.
There was barely any Antifa. Meanwhile, there's like right wing militias everywhere, and there's like 2 Antifa dudes in Portland. But
this part's the best. Like 2 Antifa in Portland. Come on, Cenk. There's just endless videos of Antifa rioting. Most of who had changed the image of the BLM protests into people thinking they were riots. Like, Antifa were the ones that were doing that. There are video accounts of BLM protesters telling the Black Bloc Antifa to stop destroying rioting because it was ruining the movement. And here's where, if anyone is sort of still with Cenk and is a reasonable person, you just sort of lost them. It's like, come on, man. Everybody saw it. The only people defending Antifa are people who like what Antifa does. Like, they exist. It happens. So do right-wing extremists. There's nothing wrong with calling them out on both sides. I mean, everybody hates these extremist people. Most people out there aren't violent, simply want to have a conversation, and might have a differing point of view. Totally great. That's how we get to the best possible outcome. But, you know, Cenk's Cenk. This next clip is great. Watch as he isn't sure if he should allow nuance in commentary about political issues.
In Seattle.
I don't know.
I think 3.
I wouldn't doubt that.
It's particularly disconcerting when far leftists with rifles take over several city blocks.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
And they unloaded 300 rounds into an SUV with 2 teenagers in it. I don't know if they both died. There were, I think, maybe potentially 3 deaths specifically there. But it's like, hey, that's what we're talking about. That happened, you know?
So that definitely happened. And that's what I mean
and
by
the George Floyd occupation as well in Minneapolis. You also had shootings. There's a video of a car driving through and they're unloading rounds into that car. So
there's a difference. There's so many nuances here. And
specific people
according to your standards, by the way.
Absolutely. Specific people on January 6th. But that's a whole very nuanced conversation. And the issue with January 6th.
Whenever it comes to the right wing, we get more nuance. But okay, go ahead.
Like, which one is it, Cenk? Are we allowed to have nuance or are we not? In the first clip, it's Tim Pool talking about the rioting and looting and what we would all consider kind of left-wing extremism during that summer. And then when Tim tries to show that there might be nuance in January 6th, Cenk laughs about making nuance. I mean, he can't even make up his mind in a 3-hour episode. How are you supposed to believe him on anything else?
The people who think that.
So I'll give you another example. You were critical of me over my statements about January 6th, which I believe you took out of context.
Okay, go ahead.
So I made the point that trespass charges require an initial warning to anybody who's going to be charged. Right? You can't allow someone to enter a public building.
But then if you just look at a right winger the wrong way, they can blast you with their shotgun. You think that
Tim Pool points out here how Cenk misrepresents him, and he knows he's wrong, so he just defaults to making things up. Cenk is wrong about trespass laws, so that means right-wingers want to blow people away with their shotgun at will. Gotta love it. Let's watch the final clip as Cenk explains how Hillary Clinton denying the results of the election are totally different from Donald Trump denying the results of the election. Oh, and also how Cenk is always right, and the mainstream media is apparently scared of him.
We didn't go around going, no, Al Gore's still the president, and losing the goddamn minds that I see with the right
But in 2016, they did.
No, they didn't. See, I'm glad you're bringing that up. See, that's another super important distinction because Hillary Clinton whined about losing the election in 2,000 ways. Oh, it was the Russians. It was my dog ate my homework.
The Steele dossier.
Steele dossier. The Bernie bros did it. Blah, 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 blah. Because she didn't want to accept responsibility. And the establishment media didn't want to accept responsibility because they all loved Hillary Clinton. They all hated Bernie Sanders. They all hated Donald Trump. They hated anyone who wasn't the establishment. Hillary Clinton is the epicenter of the establishment. So they couldn't live with the fact that they were preposterously wrong. You know what got under their skin the most? Me. Because I told them, hey, you idiots, Hillary Clinton's going to lose, right? And Bernie Sanders has a 12-point lead on Donald Trump, you morons, right?
I'm calling it. Hillary Clinton, the winner of this presidential election.
I finished the earlier thought. So for all of Hillary Clinton's whining, she never said the election, that there was fraud in the voting, that the election was stolen from me through the fraud in the voting, and it's an illegitimate election, and I should be president.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that.
Well, she said it was
She never said that. She never, ever, 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 ever said that.
I think it's also critical to understand that, as I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
I'm kind of awesome.
Yeah.
As you can see, Cenk is arrogant, condescending, and smug, contradicting himself every step of the way throughout this discussion. For this podcast, and many other Cenk blunders, I crown Cenk this week's King of Cringe. I urge you to watch the full podcast on the Timcast IRL channel, since there's just too much for me to go over here in this video today. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below on what you may want to be covered next. Peace out.